You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Boss Hog Liberty Podcast. This is episode number 203 of East Central Indiana's favorite podcast. Jeremiah Morrell here, joined by video producer, co-host Zach Burcham. On my hard right is Kyle Robbins returning. You're in the co-host chair this week, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations. We've doubled your pay. You've got a live microphone to complain about anything and everything you need to and want to.
Sounds good.
And it comes with almost no responsibility, so it should work out.
And
Great.
It's all over Facebook.
And it's all over Facebook. We're 203 episodes in, and we've never cost anybody a job. So I think we're either due or we're going to be okay.
Pressure's on then.
You never know. And then our guest this week is going to be John Oreovicz. We've been sitting here hanging out for the last 20 minutes or so. We did a cool Patreon. John is a. Are you on?
I'm not.
Oh,
I am.
You're
yes,
there.
I am.
You're a questioning producer, video producer, audio producer, Zach's skill set.
Let me go back to chair number 2 of 3 for the night.
You're the guy that likes to do the marathons and run. So having 3 workspaces seems
It'd just be nice if there wasn't 400 foot of cable between each desk.
Well,
I'm going to take out that light one day or the camera.
We're doing the best we can, man. Yeah. I don't know. It's a small miracle that it is pulled together as it is.
And something fell out of the computer and I plugged it back in. I think it goes back there. But in the confusion of getting my peek into Dakota's marriage, I don't know if I was supposed to plug it back in or not.
Well, if you see a message that seems important, you're excused to go press buttons and fix things as needed. I'm trying to watch I'm taking a look at the chat, and it doesn't act like anybody's saying that they can't hear it. So we're going to assume that things are pointing north and they're going well. All right. So, Zach, we did the Patreon. We covered Indiana's crazy ass weather.
Yeah.
And, fantasy IndyCar.
Yep.
Very much worth a donation at any level to the show.
Yeah.
Plus you get the show notes every week, dropped into the super secret Patreon Facebook group. So you've got access to know what we're doing. And there's a lot of links in here. Very important links to our author, John's books, how to find them, how to find more information and stories that we're doing. I did the show notes this week.
College.
Yeah, you're trying to make it happen. This is like 2 out of the last 3 weeks we've had authors. It's been fun. And I don't want to brag too much about the reach of this show, but like 2 years ago, there was a guy who was selling chicken waterers, and he said, "Hey, let's run a special on Boss Hog of if you buy this chicken, who the hell thinks you need a chicken waterer and that this is the audience to do it?" But he said, "Hey, we'll give you, here's a promo code Boss Hog if you go buy the Farmer Brad chicken waterer." And we haven't talked about it in a year and a half. He messages me yesterday and said, "Hey, we just sold a chicken waterer." How somebody remembered. So that's like the third one we sold. And I said, this is a great joke. I love it. It fits the show. It fits the BS nature of we talk about small town stupidity. That's the core of the show, and it's whatever we find interesting. That's what we talk about. So we talked about chickens and chicken waterers. We've had a running joke about urban chickens and local chickens. So a chicken waterer made a lot of sense, and son of a gun, Farmer Brad sold a chicken waterer this week thanks to Boss Hog.
So I should have been paying closer attention to the conversations at the park restaurant.
Oh my gosh!
Before the show,
yes, you told me you had breakfast for dinner.
I did. I had a delicious ribeye steak with scrambled eggs, hash browns. Fantastic.
You could barely get a table. I was in there on Tuesday night, and I had to go to the very far end of the building to find a table for 5 because I'm an incredibly social person. I couldn't do just a table for 4. I had a big group of 5, and it was fantastic.
Yeah,
I got the fried chicken.
They filled the gap nicely because after Bill's Diner burned down, we need a diner. We didn't have we had the early bird, but the early bird's pretty small
and it's closed for dinner.
Yeah, open for dinner. The park's solid. It's a solid diner option, and every town needs one.
And they have homemade dinners, but homemade desserts. Did you get a dessert? Did they talk you into pie?
I did not, but having seen the fried chicken on the menu and being the fried chicken connoisseur that I am, it may merit a trip back. It was, people jokingly look at me for my food recommendations. And so I can safely say that if you're in Newcastle, the Park restaurant does get a 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. It's in a strip mall. And you think, why in the world is the Park restaurant in a strip mall in Newcastle? And like everything. Do you know the story, Kyle?
No, I do not.
You're a Newcastle guy and you don't know how we
Yeah,
got the
but
Park
I've been away for a little while.
It says that it's 3 generations.
So there was a Park restaurant in the city park in Rushville, and they had a fire. It burnt like 10 years ago. And they reopened a location in Milroy, which is a town halfway between Newcastle and Rushville, while they were dealing with the fire. They never did rebuild the park in Rushville, but they found another old location on Main State Road 3 in Rushville, and they opened that location. But they had so many Newcastle people that were going to Milroy that they said, we're just going to have a Newcastle location too. So now there's 2 park restaurants. Neither one of them are in a park, but they're both on State Road 3, but they do great.
I think the one's close. Yeah, the one in Rushville's, I think, close to the park. But yeah,
It's adjacent to it.
Yeah, it's right next to the hospital.
But the old one used to be right in the park. Yeah. So there you go. That is news we did not think we were going to get into today, but that's what you get here at Boston.
And we needed a diner pretty bad. So
yeah, some of us are big fans of Stacks, Montgomery's. We have so many local restaurants we talk about and frequent.
Weenie World.
Oh my gosh. Have you been to Weenie World?
It's a gem.
I have been to Weenie World. I was a little disappointed in the weenie.
Well, it's the ice cream.
Well,
it's about the ice cream now and the tenderloin. So that Weenie World, a lot of restaurants, a lot of these stories are, hey, the restaurant burned down.
Yeah. Well, Weenie World is a derivative of our former Bill's Diner.
Yes.
Because Bill's Diner used to be where the car lot is next to Weenie World. And so they moved some of the offerings over.
Some of the menu moved.
So like, yeah, if you get the jumbo tenderloin.
That's the Bill's tenderloin. I've seen
that
you
is
mention
Bill's
it on
Diner.
your social media.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And is it truly a good tenderloin?
It's massive.
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's good.
So there's 2 kinds of tenderloins. There's this is Indiana talk for you guys that are listening in Hawaii and far off distant places. There's 2 kinds of a tenderloin. There's a real pork tenderloin that's pounded out and it's real.
Right.
And then there's a cutlet, which is
a fritter.
A fritter.
People
Yeah.
call them, yes.
Yeah. Theirs is a fritter, which is not the superior tenderloin, but you can get a massive tenderloin when you go fritter.
A fritter's a professional fowl, especially if it's advertised as a tenderloin.
So that is what you will find if you find the jumbo tenderloin.
For example, Robin Miller's beloved Mug and Bun Drive-In serves a fritter, not a tenderloin.
Yes.
But if you are in Speedway, Dawson's on Main.
They have a real tenderloin.
They have a superb tenderloin. Barbecue and Bourbon has a superb tenderloin as well. So there you go. More dining advice.
Speedway is a tiny little town with solid food options because Charlie Brown's is a staple for a race weekend for me for breakfast. You never know who you run into while you're in there, and they have a solid breakfast as well. And then we hit Mug and Bun in the evening.
I forgot we're finishing the intro. This show is about our lives in rural Indiana.
I have to get one more plug in since we've mentioned Mug and Bun.
Go for it.
There's actually a separate business behind the Mug and Bun Drive-In, and it's called Mug and Bun Pizza.
Really?
It is a separate business. It is carry out only. It's only open from like 5 to 9. Wednesday through Sunday. And the pizzas, my son likes the pizza. He thinks it's very good. My girlfriend likes the pizza. They have pork chop and chicken dinners that are just phenomenal. Roasted potatoes that they hand cut there, fried biscuits, apple butter, applesauce, the whole works. So that is actually my top tip for dining in Speedway. Mug and Bun Pizza behind the drive-in.
See, my dad is a big Pasquale's guy. Being a New Yorker, he says go get the Pasquale's on 10th Street. On 16th Street.
There is one on 16th,
yes.
right by the High on the Hill, the head shop.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not too far from the former Taco Bell, though. You really want to venture down?
Hey, that place is blown up. It's called California Burger now, and there's 15 cars in line all the time. I hear it's not that good, but
it's busy.
Yeah, they did a thing on the news or whatever. They were talking about people are waiting like half a day just to get a cheeseburger.
So back to intros.
Sorry. We interrupt this hijacked podcast.
This is what we expect.
I didn't get a chance to eat dinner before I came, so it doesn't take long to distract me there. Yeah, we had some weather yesterday, but it's nice and cozy in here. And that's because we're going to thank all the Patreon people to help keep the bills paid here because it keeps the heat on. And it looks like we might need air conditioning next week.
I barely turned the heat on. I remembered when I walked in the door, I said, it feels cool in here. It's like 57 degrees. So normally I hit the Nest thermostat and it kicks on and it's nice and comfortable in here, but it's catching up.
So we're going to thank Chris Lamb and Christy Avery from Fort Wayne, and then everybody's favorite car salesman, even though I haven't bought a car from him, but everybody else has.
You haven't bought a car yet.
Yeah. Jonathan Phillips And then I'll hop on the chat in a minute here. We'll post the T-Chip store links, which is where you can buy all your Boss Hog of Liberty merch, which is tchip.com/BHOL1. I don't know where Andrew Bowman is. This is his job if I'm on the show. 1, 2, 3, or 4, then BHOL mug. You can get the color changing mug. And we still have some masks and the net gator in there because if you're going to go to the track in the month of May, you're going to need those. So they're not gone yet.
No news on whether or not neck gaiters are going to be allowed, though. When I went to the basketball game at Bankers Life, it was if you have a neck gaiter, go back to your car and try again.
Yeah, they don't count.
Gators were unacceptable.
I know they don't count at Disney either. It has to be like a 2-layer mask. So I'm actually looking at getting I need to upgrade my masks for the month of May if I'm going to spend that much time in one. I need one that doesn't give me tan lines, probably. Let's be honest.
I bought the Zach and I did the same thing, and I bought the full size Wood Brothers mask that they had for their crew when they were selling them at the first NASCAR race back. They're like, our crew guys are going to live in these and they're going to be fine and it's okay. And I'm like, well, I'm a big guy. I want a big mask. And I've been rocking that thing the entire time, but it's black. And if I'm going to be outside for 6, 7, 8 hours a day and it's going to be,
you need to have a wardrobe of masks. I need these days.
Multiple masks.
For style reasons, for cleanliness and hygiene.
Yeah. I've got the
net gaiters for that, but apparently they're not appropriate. So yeah, I need to I'm looking at the Under Armour one or something. I know that kid got one of those and liked it. So
tell you what, K&N air filters actually make a really good one. That's the one when we had to wear them at work. Those are the ones I got, and they're actually really breathable.
Are they a lifetime one? You just have to oil it from time to time.
That makes sense that a filter.
Yeah, they give you a little. They give you a little pack of that with each mask, so keeps all the.
I've already got a K&N recharging kit at home. I'm good to go.
I'm going to ask Kyle to pull his mic away just a touch. That way, we don't make Zach go do another job. Because you've got a big booming voice today.
Yeah, I don't know. Just trying to seem alive.
You're doing great. All right, John. We used to hear you on talk radio all the time. You were a featured guest on a number of podcasts and radio shows.
What happened to them?
I don't know.
What the hell happened?
I don't know. The people. I was like, well, hell, I want to talk to Oreo. This is going to be great. You used to do, I think, the Indiana Talk stuff. You would do. I was on Gary Snyder, right? Did you do the Gary Snyder show from time to time?
I did with Greg Rakestraw's
Greg
show on there.
Yeah.
I was a regular back in the day on JMV and the other local programs in Indianapolis, but
phone doesn't ring nearly enough. Well, there needs to be more racing talk all the way around.
You lose your byline and people lose interest in you. But
so we'll say freelance.
The good thing is that interest is back with the publication of this upcoming book.
I was going to say the reason that I invited you on at this time. But it's an open invitation, and you can come back next week if you want to. We're talking to Daryl Radford, formerly of the Courier-Times. He lost his byline. He retired. Local.
He probably had a fallout plan, though. Like me.
Yeah, I think his plan is just.
He was like his fourth retirement
to be grandpa.
I think he was hoping they don't call him back for the 5th time.
Do you want to work for a small town newspaper covering city council meetings in Newcastle? Because between retirements, they need somebody to cover for Daryl here. So you've written
all I need
2
to
books.
do is just hang out at the park restaurant.
You will get all you need to know,
news, right?
And if you see 2 or more commissioners gathered, that's a problem, and it makes for great copy. And that happened. Oh my gosh, this is not one of those shows. But yeah. Don't have meetings outside of public meetings. That's the lesson to be learned.
Top tip for the day, right?
Yes, it happens all the time. So John brought one book that's actually in print and ready to go now, and I was blown away at the pictures because I haven't had time to read it because it's been here for 3 minutes. But it is Time Flies: The History of Pac West Racing. Cover of it is Scott Dixon's win in 2001, Nazareth Speedway in Pennsylvania. John was working for the team at the time.
I was not. I was back in the media.
You were back in the media. Okay.
But in 1997, when Pac West had their best season, Mauricio Gugelmin had 3 pole positions and won a race, and Mark Blundell won 3 times. I was the PR guy for the team in 97 and 98.
In the FedEx series?
Yes, I guess it was 97. It was kind of a nameless series. It was still the PPG IndyCar World Series. But they had to drop IndyCar for legal reasons. But yes, it became the FedEx Championship Series in 1998.
And then the new book that's not yet out, but is very exciting, is the political book, The Split.
Well, it is Indy split, and I think anybody that's followed IndyCar racing for the last 50 years knows that there hasn't been a whole lot of harmony in the sport. And on several occasions, most notably in the late 70s and again in the mid 90s, there was outright hostility that resulted in 2 competing IndyCar series for a while. And the second split, the one that my book focuses on, was the kart IRL split that went from 96 to 2008 and finally got resolved, but in many ways really didn't get closure until recently.
So when I first saw the book, and I immediately said, why does John think this story needs to be told now? The first reaction that some people are going to say is that you're reopening old wounds. We're finally past it. Why do we have to do this now? And then the more I've read, the more I've thought, well, no, it's history. You have to talk about it, and it helps you understand why and how. And it's probably far enough in the rearview mirror that it's appropriate to start doing to write these stories.
That's fair to say, and it's coincidental that it's coming out on the 25th anniversary of what people think is the flashpoint of the 96 split, where there was a US 500 run at Michigan Speedway on the same day that the 96 Indy 500 was run. The topic never really went away, and that's one of the things is that, yes, the split ended in 2008 and Champ Car and the IRL merged or unified or amalgamated or went bank, whatever you want to call it. It did become one series then. But Tony George, within the next couple of years, he was kind of gone, and the sport continued to struggle for leadership. And that's been a theme for decades, looking for the right front man or the right leader for it. And I don't think that there was actually real closure until Roger Penske bought the Speedway and the series, late 19, early 20. And I think that finally, even though everybody's been together racing under the same umbrella since 2008, I think a lot of the wounds still didn't heal, and it needed to symbolically move on to new leadership, and fresh leadership. And from that perspective, it couldn't be any better than Penske. I mean, nobody loves the Speedway and the Indy 500 more than Roger Penske. And to the Holman George family's credit, they identified the right buyer. They identified arguably the only guy that really cared enough to
look past all of everything else that was there.
Yeah. I mean, and Penske loves that place so much, and you can see just by what he's done in the year that he's owned the place. I mean, it's got a fresh coat of paint or a fresh coat of sod everywhere. He's applied some love to the track that had been missing for a little while.
I'm looking forward to my permission slip to go back inside of the track again this year. We're just putting the toe in the water every day. We get just a little closer to actually having the access we might have had 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We
got in a little bit in October, and I ran around the track on race day in August last year and saw. I was like, man, he put some. But that's all I've seen was just like staring in the fence at a lot of the sections because we just weren't allowed in a lot of areas.
I've been to the museum.
Yeah,
I've had the chance to go into the museum since.
Now the museum's not part of the Penske ownership, but there's been substantial upgrades there as well. And they really do a nice job of rotating exhibits these days. They've got a Rick Mears exhibit that's opening soon, if not already.
Andy Granatelli is. I know I was there, and that was still in there a month or two ago.
Yeah, that's the last time I was there as well. But they've got a Rick Mears exhibition opening up, and some new leadership at the museum too. Again, it's not part of the Penske.
It's an independent organization.
It is, and it's a nonprofit now.
Yep.
So its mission has changed somewhat under what it was with the Holman family. But Rob Dyson, the longtime sports car racer, is now the chairman of the board of the Speedway Museum. I think Rob's got a lot of connections out there in the vintage world and everything. And I think ultimately their goal is they need a new building. The museum, especially if you look at places like the NASCAR Hall of Fame and everything, it makes the IMS museum look a bit quaint, but they've done a great job with the limitations that they have.
They need more square footage.
They do.
They've continued to add the back wing of that building
which used to be office space.
Yeah. I didn't recall that being open. I remember the first time I went back there, I was like, this is a great room because it's got a killer view because you can see the tracks in the background. I was like, where's this been for my entire life?
It was Tony's office.
Was it? That's a nice office. But yeah, and the vault exhibit was really good because you always kind of wonder, like, oh, they've got some cars and then they have some like heavy hitters in their collection that aren't necessarily IndyCar related. Like you mentioned, you known somebody was involved with NART. They have the last Le Mans winning Ferrari that was a NART Ferrari, and I went to that exhibit. I was reading the description of this, and I was like, no way. This museum has got this just sitting in the collection.
Yeah, that's the Jochen Rindt car from 1965, I think.
They have that one, and they have an old Mercedes. Evidently, Mercedes desperately wants back. But yeah.
I can tell you that very few of those Mercedes factory cars are out in the public domain. And the factory donated that car to Tony Holman, to the Speedway, in the 1960s, I want to say. 70s at the latest. And it doesn't surprise me that they want it back. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Could pay for a couple of extra Indy 500 entries for Vision Racing if they sold it.
Oh, that could fund a team for like a while.
It's Ed Carpenter Racing now.
Oh, yes, that is correct. That's correct. I just know a young USAC driver that could use a shot.
Yep. Well, we got the shop thing covered, kind of. We need a little more parking space.
No, not a shop, a shot.
Oh, a shot. Oh, yeah. No,
well,
I'll take any shot.
They have vaccines at the Speedway. They have clinics almost every day.
That's true. If I fall asleep, by the way, it's because I got my final shot today. I am fully vaccinated and approved to go to the Speedway. I have my permission slip from the state of Indiana.
I'm fully vaccinated as well. I got mine at the Speedway. Unfortunately, when they filled out my card, they filled the date out incorrectly as 5/3 instead of 3/5. So in theory, I have not been vaccinated until May 3rd.
Oh, no. Oh, that's that may be problematic.
What's the window? No, you have to have one shot 1 week before, I think, for infield access.
Well, I got the Johnson & Johnson, so I'm
you're one
and done, assuming I don't clot up and die.
If you've made it this far, you're probably going to be okay. Maybe you're a month in. You've got full immunity.
I am either 6 weeks in or 3 weeks, 2 weeks short.
You're premature. We'll find out. All I know is I've told this story a couple of times, pretty much every time we've done a show since my first vaccination. The first 2 nights I slept like a baby, so I may fall asleep immediately on this show. I don't know how it's going to go. We're going to do our best. So the split book, I know that you did share some pictures of some of the access that you've had and some of the research that went into making this. You had stuff going back to the white papers from the 70s. There were some just phenomenal documents that you shared, a big dump. The cart, I think even in the cart era, some reports from Greg Moore's crash.
Yeah, I didn't post anything about that. I did just kind of post a picture of the Dan Weldon report.
Maybe that was it. There were 2 or 3 all in one time that I thought that struck me.
Yeah, there was a memo from Carl Haas that was pretty funny where he watched the IRL's race at Phoenix in 1997, which is it's kind of a famous race. It was their second race with their new Dallara and G-Force cars and Oldsmobile and Nissan normally aspirated engines, and they had some pretty significant engine problems. They had a hard time keeping these.
Carl Haas was a kart owner.
Carl Haas was a kart owner, so he watched the IRL race on TV, and it was the famous race that Jim Guthrie won. The guy from Blueprint Racing. He's, a guy that towed the car in on the back of a flatbed, and he owned a body shop in Albuquerque, and his friends all pitched in to keep him running. And it was the ultimate small timer. And Tony Stewart finished second driving for Menard. And it was, I think 110 out of 200 laps were run under, at least 90 laps out of 200 were run under caution. And it's, it had like an 85 mile an hour average speed. It was a farce, and Carl Haas called it just that. And it was interesting just to go back. I was fortunate to see a couple of archives of interesting material, and it's fascinating to get a behind the scenes look of things that people don't get to see, and see the kind of talk that's going on behind the scenes. And
so the genesis of the split moment was the series versus kart, and who was going to have control of the series and the ownership, and schedules and allocation of money. There were 2 competing interests: the Speedway versus the owners that had the rest of the series.
Yeah, they kind of repeated what happened in 1979. Kart was formed in 1979, not to take over the Indy 500, not to take over the management of IndyCar racing, but because CART felt that the sport was not performing commercially in the 70s. You had the Indy 500, which was this massive event, but the team owners, as times changed and the team owners were more than just wealthy sportsmen that ran the Indy 500, they needed a year-long series of races to help them sustain their teams as businesses. They looked at the example of what happened in Formula One, where one of the team owners, a guy called Bernie Ecclestone, got the team owners together and they took over the commercial rights of the sport. They marketed it. They sold the television rights. And as such, they brought a much greater revenue stream to themselves to ensure their survival. CART tried to take over or proposed taking over the marketing aspects of the sport from USAC, and USAC rebuffed them. And it resulted in a split in 1979 where CART ran a series of races and United States Auto Club ran a series of races. That happened again in 1996, but the key difference is in 1979, the CART guys always intended to run the Indy 500 and in fact went to court to get their way into the Indy 500 because USAC tried to hold them out. In the 96 split, once Tony George announced the IRL and then secondly announced that 75% of the grid at every IRL race would be reserved for IRL points leaders.
The infamous
25 and 8 rule, because those are the numbers of how it would extrapolate to the speedway with a 33-car grid. When Tony made that move, CART decided, well, we're not going to support his races, and they made the decision to go into competition with him, which was somewhat different than, yes, they ran their own series of races in 79, but they intended to be at the 500. This time they put on a race in competition
on the same 500. Day.
And we all know how that turned out.
Yeah. And then you had the politics or the sniping back and forth you had a very fierce 96 through 2002, I would say, where you didn't have a lot of 96 through 99, where there was really no crossover at all. Teams didn't switch back and forth.
For the end of the 90s, CART was very strong. Yep. Their attendance didn't fall much. Their sponsorship didn't fall. Their TV numbers dropped a little between 96 and 99. But the bottom line is up till 2000, they were still looking very strong. The IRL was kind of putt-putting along and certainly maintaining its level, but it wasn't really causing any type of threat to the CART series. And the biggest thing that happened in the late 90s is that when Tony brought the IRL out and he presented the Indianapolis 500 with a different field, and then starting a year later, different cars, these IRL cars, which were bigger and bulkier. And let's be honest, they were shitbox race cars compared to the CART cars at the time. He tried to present a cut rate product as the Indy 500, and it didn't affect the Indy 500 as much as it affected all the other races. You immediately saw the attendance went to zero at Phoenix, at New Hampshire, at all these IRL races. And Tony, the sad thing is he was trying to protect and grow the oval part of the sport because he perceived that CART was a threat to that. But unfortunately, what he did was he devalued the oval part of it by putting out this cut rate product. And people weren't stupid.
And when you got a big crowd to start at Texas or at Charlotte, Atlanta, some of the places that didn't have IndyCar. And then when they did see IndyCar racing, the product wasn't what we experience today.
It's true. And some of those early crowds at Texas and the like were simply because of season ticket packages. Right. And there was a novelty factor. And let's be honest, the IRL pack races at places like Texas and Charlotte and Atlanta, I thought they were incredibly dangerous. I thought they were literally Death Race 2000. But for some fans, they were compelling because there's a trend for race fans now. They don't want to see a guy go out and put on a quality performance and win a race by 20 seconds because he's the best driver in the best car who had the best strategy that day. Race fans demand a 20-car pack with 58 passes for the lead, hurtling toward a photo finish. And the IRL pack races gave them that. And
that's where Sam Hornish came from, right? He was the ultimate at that.
They were a bravery contest, plain and simple. And Sam Hornish and Dan Weldon were the bravest guys out there in those bravery contests. But it was artificial because the cars had so little power and so much downforce that they were just running flat out. And it's not like you could say a monkey or a chimpanzee could do it because it took a very specific skill and a lot of courage to do it. But at the same time, they weren't really driving the cars. It was almost like, professional stunt driving because they were all absolutely flat. The cars were nowhere near maxed out. That's why you started seeing the setups where they'd start lowering the rear wing and start running them like a power boat to try to get the rear wing out of it to try to get rid of the drag and everything. It was incredibly dangerous.
The way you set your car up now,
I cannot believe they didn't.
We don't have any
people.
wings.
But it's a miracle that those pack races didn't kill people.
Yeah.
And then they finally realized it. I mean, they finally edged back from that. And unfortunately, they had one last pack race in 2011 and the guy got killed.
So as this is happening and the IRL decided they're going to go full oval, you saw a migration to where the kart series in the split starts to become more and more international, and you saw some European and other international events
yes
coming
and
in.
no, because the international aspect of kart started in the 80s. It started with the cars, then the drivers, then some of the road races, and then eventually you got a race in Australia and a race in Brazil. But the weirdest thing is that between 96 and 99 or 2000 and 2001, the number of ovals on the kart schedule actually increased. Now, granted, some of them were international. They went to Germany,
England, right?
They went to England, they went to Japan and places like that. And they philosophically, they didn't want to do road racing around the world. Formula One, they wanted to leave Formula One after they did their race at Surfers Paradise in Australia that started in 91. They had a gentleman's agreement with the FIA that IndyCar races overseas would be on ovals. And they were until 2003 when kart was in its last throes and got really desperate and ran at Brands Hatch that year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's strange that you'd think that they might have said, all right, well, we're the road racing, and they might have tried to maximize that aspect, but they didn't. They continued pursuing ovals, but to me, that's what made the kart series great in the 80s and the 90s. It became this great combination of American racing, of the Unsers and AJ Foyt and the Andrettis and Bobby Rahal and Danny Sullivan and Rick Mears, but also with Emerson Fittipaldi and Nigel Mansell and Teo Fabi and Gilles de Ferran, and a great mix of road racing venues and oval tracks. It really was a best of all worlds. And as it was recognized as that in the early 90s. It was recognized as that by NASCAR as a threat here in the U.S. It was recognized by Formula One as a threat internationally, which is part of why, they handed the keys to the Speedway in the Kingdom to Tony George when he was 30. And he enters into this fight with kart. He felt he and the Speedway were disrespected by kart, but at the same time, kart felt that they were disrespected by the Speedway because they had taken this sport from being the Indy 500 and a handful of other crappy races that nobody went to and weren't on TV, and built it into an established worldwide series with the Long Beach Grand Prix and great races at Milwaukee and Cleveland and places like that. They had this mutual lack of respect, and it blew up eventually.
Personalities, politics.
Yeah. The kart owners viewed Tony as an unseasoned punk. And he viewed them as, arrogant, rich dudes that were driving the cost of racing up and were taking the sport away from oval tracks. And whether he was right or not, he did perceive them as a threat to the Speedway in the Indy 500.
At that time, what kind of money are we talking about for those teams in the series versus what we would see in the current day?
Well, at its peak in kart, the budgets were probably 15 to 20 million a year, and we're talking the late 90s here.
Yeah,
turn of the century, which is obviously add another 50% to that now to get it in today's.
It's
money.
a $30 million. It's about what
Probably
it is for
so.
the NASCAR Cup program.
Yeah,
somewhere in the range.
but a quality Indy program now, 7-8 million probably. The costs have come down. I mean, they had to. The thing about the kart series in the 90s is when it was at its best is they had 4 different competing chassis manufacturers and 2 different brands of tires and 4 different engines. And the key was picking the right combination of them.
You had to have a Lola with the current Chevy and on a Firestone tire, or else you may as well not even field a car, right? Or whatever the combination was.
But the thing about it was in those days, they had the sponsorship to justify it. And they could go out and they could buy 6 new $400,000 race cars a year and afford a pair of $3 million engine leases. The commercial support was there to sustain it.
Much of this is the Hollywood cigarettes and cool.
Clearly tobacco money was hugely important.
Marlboro.
And, one of the things that we talk about in my book is that Marlboro signed up to be the sponsor of the USAC series starting in 1971, the very same year that Winston began sponsoring NASCAR. And you saw what the Winston sponsorship became. I mean, it grew to be $20 million a year, and it was the Winston Cup. And USAC in 1972, Marlboro believed they wouldn't get any competing tobacco companies in, and USAC allowed Viceroy to come in to sponsor the Vels Parnelli Jones super team with Al Unser, Mario Andretti, and then Joe Leonard drove a car sponsored by Samsonite Luggage. So Marlboro pulled out then. They're like, screw this, we thought we had.
So they thought they had exclusivity, which is what you saw in the
and they didn't come
sprint
back.
era with NASCAR when they threw Verizon and AT&T out of the series.
Yeah, and what's ironic about the Marlboro deal is the guy that brought them back was Emerson Fittipaldi. He's the guy that got Philip Morris back into IndyCar racing 15 years later in 85, 86.
Followed him over, and then ultimately he joined Team Penske, and that relationship continued.
Emerson retired from Formula One, and he ran a few races and showed he could be competitive, and he went to drive for Patrick Racing for Pat Patrick. And it was during that year. He ran in 85 with sponsorship from 7-Eleven, but he still had a personal services deal with Marlboro, European Marlboro, Philip Morris of Europe. But he then got Philip Morris USA to sponsor Patrick Racing from 86 to 89.
Yep.
And then Patrick sold the team to Chip Ganassi, and it became the Chip Ganassi Racing we know and love today. And Emerson went to Penske and took the Marlboro sponsorship with him. And then that sponsorship stayed with Penske until they were forced out
the federal
in
government said you
2011
can't
or
be here
whatever it
anymore.
was. Yeah.
Amazing time. Amazing linkage in history as to how that happened. And the livery continued on all the way through.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to actually have the word Marlboro on the car anymore. But and if you look at it now, I mean, Ferrari is still sponsored by Philip Morris in Formula One.
Mission Winnow.
Yes.
And there was even a point I knew for a while, like they couldn't put the name on the car, but it was like the barcode
Right.
was on the wing of, like, if you could barcode scan the rear wing of a Ferrari, it would pull up, and you're like,
Filter King.
yeah, it's like, so I think if people think about Penske's classic livery, it's a Marlboro livery. You think about the Marlboro red and white.
Do you guys have sponsorship restrictions in your series, Kyle?
No, not really. I mean, just there's nothing really preventing you from having any type of company. I mean, our type of racing, we're probably more welcome to what we can get, because since we're a lot smaller deal.
So what you're saying is that if somebody has a small tobacco company and they want to start,
yeah, I don't know if my wife would be too thrilled about that, but we'll put their sticker on the car.
they only require you to smoke a half pack a day, man. It'll be fine.
Ooh,
I didn't think I realized that the Mission Winnow thing was still them, and then I've heard it somewhere. I'm like, man, they just will not, like, they're just finding a way to keep that money in there, even though I look at that and was like, what is that? And I don't look it up.
So we were talking with John before the cameras rolled, and we talked about how 93 was probably the peak kart year when the F1 champion came over to the United States, and Nigel Mansell. You had Mario Andretti. You had super teams that were still in existence. And you talked about the schedule that the series was running at that time. And if you look now, and you see a very strong correlation between what that series looked like and what they were trying to accomplish and what this current generational leadership is looking at for the 2020-21 season.
One of the most, I think it's good, but it's also extremely frustrating that all this negativity and strife and disharmony and everything happened. And what we've got now is we've got a series that looks a lot like the kart series in 1996.
You had this massive fight.
The cars look like those cars, and they purposely do, because after several generations of these IRL cars, they listened to the fans, and the fans wanted to see the wheels again and not have an airbox. And so you've got a schedule that looks like the kart schedule. You've got cars that look like the kart cars. The difference is that the IMS is running it now, which is ultimately, I suppose, what they wanted back in the day, even though Tony George said it was never his goal to run IndyCar racing. But they have. I mean, the Holmans, since Tony Holman bought the Speedway in 1945, they formed USAC in 1956 after all that happened in 1955 with people getting killed, Bill Vukovich and Alberto Ascari and the Le Mans disaster and everything. AAA pulled out of racing. So Tony Holman was the guy that formed USAC. And USAC and the Speedway were inseparable. Honestly, up till '97, until Texas, when they botched the Texas race there, troubles. And yes, they did, which memorably resulted in AJ Foyt backslapping Ari Luyendyk in Victory Circle.
That's worth a Google if you're not familiar with that.
You should look up AJ Foyt and Ari Luyendyk, and then the other one on YouTube is AJ Foyt is pissed at Jeff Andretti. That is,
I've seen that one.
Oh, there's a lot of AJs. AJ Foyt and Kevin Coogan, Coogan, that damn Coogan. Yeah, there's a number of
there would be hours of AJ Foyt footage if he was a couple of years later and the internet had been around.
You know, it's frustrating though, because it's the Speedway is running it now, but they're running the series they were fighting.
Right. Yeah. And it's new ownership, right? It feels like the Vietnam War.
The Penske ownership didn't change the cars in 2018 to
no, it's the same. It's common ownership now, but the direction, honestly, Penske has not made major changes from the direction that you saw 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The management teams of the series and the track are still essentially the same, very much the same path.
I think all that stuff was solid.
Yeah.
I think they were already on a very good path. And who knows why the sale occurred when it did. I mean, a lot of people believe that it had to do with Mary Holman George dying. She died in November of 2018. And it's probably not a coincidence that, like, literally 366 days later, the announcement was made that the Speedway sold. And when she was alive, Mrs. George would always say that this, the Speedway was for her grandchildren, which would be the children of Tony George and his sisters. In other words, the next generation of the Holman George family, which would have been Jared Krizaloff, Kyle Krizaloff, Nancy George's daughters, and Tony George's daughter Lauren and such. But I think it's inspiring. It's inspired that they made the decision to do it. And honestly, if you think about with COVID and everything that happened,
it would have been very difficult last year.
It's you can't answer yes or no. Would they have had an Indy 500? Would they have had a series? Would the Speedway look like 1944 again? Because it's pretty clear that once the unification occurred and the Holmans poured roughly $30 million into getting all the kart teams equipment and changing the schedule and everything, there had not been a lot of investment in the facility for the last 10 or 12 years. You hear stories that maybe they lost some money to Bertie Madoff. The bottom line is that after the unification, when the sport needed them to continue spending money at the level that Tony had been spending since 1994, they pulled off the gas.
You saw massive improvements. The F1 race, the Gasoline Alley Suites, the Pagoda got remodeled. So in the late 90s, especially 2000 to 2004 range, a lot of cash flowed into the track.
But then the key is you go back about 5 years to what they called Project 100. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time
you got a tax on.
It was the first time that they asked for public money.
Yeah. You got a tax on usage of the track.
Yep.
So everybody that buys tickets pays into it. We're back into politics, guys. There's a TIF district that was formed, and I think it was $200 million that went to the track, and it was essentially a loan against future revenue.
Right.
So if the folks that supported the track or attended the track, they used government funds to pull money forward. And that was some big improvements down in turn one in the grandstands.
A lot of it was just to bring the place up to code.
Yeah.
For accessible access and things like that. Accessible access,
ADA.
That's a double.
Yeah.
The ADA, they built some elevator towers. There were some major upgrades to make some accessible seating.
Right.
Video
but you mentioned
boards.
Politics. And one thing I want to say, just as an overall theme, is that IndyCar racing, the whole IndyCar racing community, it is a lot like the political community in the whole IRL versus kart or USAC or Champ Car or whatever you want to call them. But there's a very philosophical split between two groups. And one is road racing, higher technology, international flavor as compared to low cost, grassroots, oval tracks. And that philosophical, or that's the political battle that, of course, created it. That's what created the split, the 79 split in the first place, the whole rear engine revolution from the 60s, and the fact that the car owners were now Bruce McLaren and guys that had really had skin in the game and weren't just writing a check to run the Indy 500 every year. And that philosophical difference that started in the 60s with the road racers against the oval racers, it's still going on. And it's why people keep talking about it now, because there are still people that are passionate that think that the short track guys need to be reconnected to the Indy 500 in a way that they haven't been in you could argue 40 years or more.
You're going to get to do a race with some IndyCar All-Stars, but it's not at the Speedway this year, Kyle. You're going to be out at Eldora when SRX is running, and you're going to be on the same night as Tony Kanaan and Tony Stewart and Elio Castroneves and all those guys.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Why isn't that at the Speedway? Why aren't you guys on the dirt track at the Speedway?
Crown cars, I doubt would fit on that.
What, the little BC 39 track?
Yeah.
But I do think that was cool that they built that in there. I mean, like you said, they're trying to somewhat bring the small track racers to the Speedway and give them a little piece of it, And, I think it's great what Tony's done with the SRX series and kind of bringing those guys that maybe not wanted to run, full time in the IndyCar or NASCAR or something like that, but, still want to get out there and race and give them a discipline to do it in.
And I think Cody Swanson is going to be in that SRX.
Cody and Bobby Santos. I think Cody's around Eldora, and then Bobby Santos gets to run one there in the Raceway Park.
Let's not forget that big Haley Deegan announcement today.
I missed that. What?
Haley Deegan apparently is a full-timer in the SRX.
Really? Wow.
Don't take my word as gospel. This is just what I think I've read from a tweet from Ray Evernham.
Well, he would know. It's likely
if anybody would, yes.
Yeah. He would have the inside track to the knowledge on it. So, all right. So then my question for John as we start to wrap up the split conversation, and this is entirely free form, so we may come back to it. There's no promises. Are we looking at a new golden era starting in going forward now that we have common ownership and you've got a new car that's coming in a couple of years and you've got, I don't know, is it 9 Indy 500s winners?
A new car for the first time since 2012. All right. The 15-year life cycle out
decade,
of the old DW12.
It's a lot like a hammer, though, right? You replace, is it the same car? Because you replaced the
I
head
made
3
jokes
times.
about the last Alar. It's like, a 9-year car. We'll never see that again. Well, you're right, because we're on year 12 or something already.
Yeah. And we're not, and you're gonna get a new motor, but you're not gonna get a new car right away.
And they'll find a way to stretch it out still.
Yeah. Well, it's
I'm not holding my breath for that car.
Does it make a difference? Does it really matter? Do you feel like that makes an actual difference in the product?
Well, they had a good idea with the aero kits, honestly.
Right.
I mean, it was a good concept of like, let's have a basic tub and you can dress it up and make it look different. And if you can make it perform better, then good for you. But it didn't work. I mean, in the cars look worse than
the cars
the
look worse, but
they looked awful.
Those 3 Indy 500s were some of the most exciting to watch.
500s, yeah.
Sometimes a car would go flying, but they were really fun to watch.
But they also showed,
or a Chevy would go flying.
With the bodywork that they brought out in 18, they showed that you can reskin it pretty much at will. So they can. I mean, if they wanted to, they could create a new look for it every year, every other year. There's no need to do that. But the whole car equation, the whole car part has been pushed out of the equation. We haven't had new cars for. I mean, it used to be like there's a new Lola and a new Reynard, a new Penske every year, and you've lost that.
You've had 3 generations since the split.
Yeah,
you've essentially had 3 new chassis come out in 20 years,
right.
22 years.
But it's spec car racing,
right?
And people have lost their connection with road cars too. I mean, I can't. My car is a 2010. It's not even new, but I wouldn't even think of trying to change the oil or change the spark plugs on my car these days.
Well, they look the same. If you look at everybody buys a small SUV. I've got a GMC Terrain, and I can't tell a GMC Terrain from a Jeep, whatever the hell it is. You line up pick 4 of them, make them all black, and they're almost indistinguishable.
Yeah.
Your road cars are just as bad as a race car now.
Yeah,
I have a hunch. Yeah, the competition design cars, they did look different back in the day. Now everybody's running computers with CFD, and they crank out very, very similar designs. I don't know if you would design cars now, like race car, if they would look that different.
Well, Formula One's the answer to that question because they're allowed to be different and they're not.
Yeah, I can't tell the difference on those. Like somebody could walk by, and I started watching Drive to Survive And I was like, how do they even notice that? Like, those guys must be like studying them. They must know where to look for the little bits that you can actually tweak on. But yeah, those cars essentially look the same to me, and they're all supposed to be independently. So I don't know if that's going to happen.
IMSA is actually doing better with the Aero Kit concept, because their DPI class and what will be their LMDH class starting in 2023.
DPI means Daytona Prototype.
International, right?
International. LM is Le Mans.
And what happens there is that they take a standard P2 chassis, LMP2 chassis made by Dallara or Ligier or a couple other companies, and they are allowed to do what the IndyCar thing was. They could put their own Cadillac bodywork on it. For example, the Cadillac that runs in IMSA
looks like a Cadillac.
It's a rebodied Dallara, and the Mazda is a rebodied Multimatic, and so it's working well for IMSA, and honestly, I think IMSA is on the cusp of a boom. IndyCar racing, they got rid of their problems. They did their dirty laundry 20 years ago, and they got that out of the way, and they bottomed out, and they've been slowly on the way back up. And the Indy 500 in particular has recovered. They've had a series of anniversary events with the 100th anniversary of the building of the track and the first race and the 100th race and all that. The Indy 500's been on a nice, steady upswing. The rest of the series, it's holding steady. It's never going to get back to where it was in 93, 94, 95. It's just not realistic.
I will say that some races, I feel like after the 2020 pandemic of being pinned inside, I know from my experiences trying to get tickets, and in my package for Mid-Ohio, I'm looking for some massive crowds of people that want to do anything.
I've been going to Mid-Ohio for like 4 or 5 years. And the first year, I think I bought my tickets like February, or bought my camping February. And I probably had like 30, 40% of the place was still available to like book a camping site. And then we went and looked this year, and they all went on for sale in like one day. And on that one day, there were about 20 available for the entire place. And it's getting harder and harder to get into those places.
He's going to show us a mid-90s Mid-Ohio crowd where you can't see any grass.
Yeah.
This is actually, the IRL, their storyline was, crowds are down in CART. That's Mid-Ohio. That's the S's in 2000.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is that you have this trend coming back where I think it's a matter of how many seats you're willing to build, what you're allowing in.
Yeah. And IndyCar,
right.
Road racing, let's face it, road racing there's more room to stretch out.
Yeah.
And obviously they're talking 40% capacity for the Indy 500, which is a lot of people.
They had 100. It's going to be the largest crowd
in the world
that we've had to date.
Yeah.
Even though it's going to feel like a bit of a letdown when you see a hell of a lot of aluminum in the
It's still going to look like 3 times the Brickyard 400 crowd.
It's going to be the biggest crowd that's assembled since COVID-19 happened, since it started.
Yeah. So IndyCar, they're holding steady, and what's encouraging about it is even before Penske came in, and there's this, new feeling of optimism and everything. And it's reflected by the fact that they've got 24 full-time entries, and it is a pretty solid and deep field. And you look at the rookie class, and it's the encouraging thing for the current IndyCar series is that people from around the world want to come to it again. It's back to where it was in the 90s, where it is a destination series instead of, everything else has failed, so let's go here. They're on the upswing, and you can see that NASCAR's television and attendance has dropped dramatically since 2005, 2006. Formula One, it's hard to give a viewpoint on it in America because we're just so isolated in the Formula One world. We're very unique.
We're about ready to have double the races, allegedly.
I think it's interesting.
Or is it going to move from Texas to Florida?
There's a 10-year deal was announced for this Miami race, and I was a little skeptical about that. I said I give it over/unders 3.5, and some old geezer named Mario Andretti agreed with my assessment.
I wonder, is it better? Is it managed differently? I love the U.S. Grand Prix when it was in Indianapolis. Is it managed differently than it was then? Because you mentioned Bernie Ecclestone earlier.
He's out. He's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. So I wonder if it's managed differently. Where I knew that contracts in the day, if it was a 10-year deal, it was really nice for the track and for the home city the first couple of years. But by the time they got to like year 7, 8, 9, 10, they were paying like up to $50 million a year for a sanctioning fee. And I know Bernie was very particular about. Bernie wanted the government to pay part of that because he wanted the government involved. And that was the thing that irked him at Indy was the Georges were just like, we're taking care of this, and the tickets were cheap. And
well, the government thing, it's not going to fly in a lot of places. Now, it did in Austin. I mean, that race got on the map
until they didn't submit their human trafficking report last year and lost it.
And
but they were getting money from the state.
You hear stories that the Austin track's not in great shape, and it's funny. Their Twitter handle is like NASCAR at COTA now, so they're all in on NASCAR, and of course NASCAR is all in on road racing right now.
There's 6 or 8 road races on the NASCAR calendar this year.
Well, they've been the most compelling races on the NASCAR schedule for the last few years,
including Indianapolis, by the way.
Which needed to happen because the Brickyard 400, it was more boring than watching paint dry. It was like listening to paint dry.
Their tire race was my final Brickyard 400 I attended.
It was the last Brickyard 400 for a lot of people. If you look at the grandstands, and that was inexcusable for that to happen.
So, looking forward to the month of May, I did get my shot. I got an email the other day that said if you want to use your bronze badge, you have to show your papers.
Which I'm a little concerned. That's like I keep asking. Like, apparently, I have to show it to get my badge. And I have to go to the facility and pick it up, go to the credentials office. And then I have to have it every day that I want to get into the paddock. I'm like,
what if you get mustard on it? Like, they expect you to go and bring it to the track with you and then go spend a day of whatever the hell you're going to do eating tenderloins and making fun of.
Most people know from either having one already or having seen the pictures of everybody's on Facebook. That's like the required picture.
It's a postcard.
It's not wallet sized. It's just big enough that if I have to carry it to the track like 12 days, it will not look good at the end of 12 days. Like,
can you laminate it?
Well, I brought that up, and another guy who Jeremiah said, I didn't realize who it was. IndyCar world's a very small world, either on Twitter and even at the track. You'll see the same faces. And one guy's like, make a copy and laminate it because there's a chance, I know they've even said for the Pfizer, that people might need another booster. And so there's more spots than just the 2 on the card. You might have to put another shot on the card eventually.
He's talking about Will McCarty. Used to have the world famous blog, isitmayyet.com, which his tagline has been stolen. And I've been trying to get him some money for that for years now because the track is stolen isitmayyet.com from him. By the way, if you go, I believe it's Willpower and the Double Birds is still the last blog post. So whenever the Loudon Rain race was, that's the last time Will made a post over
that
there.
Picture just popped up again.
Glorious image.
It is. It's an amazing picture.
I was on Will's side for that. You remember this?
I remember that picture. Yes.
I was there.
He said to make a copy.
Did you bring your umbrella?
Laminate the copy.
The whole thing could have been avoided had they. One of my bugaboos is 3:45 p.m. starts because they're really fan unfriendly. Because if you're from anywhere out of town, you're not going to get home the same day. Oh yeah, and I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the fans.
I'm getting ready to go to I'm going to go to the first Nashville GP. I bought my tickets, and I think it's a 5 o'clock local start, which is 6 o'clock in Indianapolis. I'm going to get home at like 2:30 in the morning and go to work the next day.
They're hostage to the TV companies. And it's one thing if you're getting paid billions like NASCAR is, but when you're getting pennies on the dollar like IndyCar is, you've got to stand up for your fans and have anyway.
Noon start this weekend at St. Pete.
Exactly. But had that New Hampshire race run at 12:30 or 1 o'clock, it never would have rained.
Yeah. Back to you, Zach. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, well, the start thing, that's a good in Ohio. And luckily, I'd like to thank whoever the president is. I don't know his name off the top of my head at Road America because he started fighting back a few years ago.
George Brugenthies. Yeah. Oh, yeah. When they came back, it was a prerequisite. We're going to have a 12:30 start, period.
And so now we're seeing a trend.
So that Indianapolis people can drive home or Milwaukee
people. Chicago people.
Yeah.
That was the key was Chicago people because if they started their race at 3 o'clock Central and they run a 2-hour race and you get out of there and the people aren't getting back to Chicago till 9, 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday night and they don't want to do that.
And there's been a definite trend since then of races being moved up earlier and earlier by the promoters so that people like Mid Ohio was starting so late that the one year we got home at like 10 and we tried to get food on the way home and we couldn't because we had a camper and the dining rooms had closed and I was like, this is not good. And they moved it up and up a little bit more every year so we finally can get home at a decent hour. So yeah, that's a definite thing for me to. Otherwise, I've lost my train of thought or whatever was going on before that.
Laminating.
But apparently you said make a copy and laminate it. And then my thing was that now They finally got on the technology train where I had to sign my waivers like 2 or 3 times while they kept changing stuff up for my bronze badge. And the second time it took my picture. I'm like, okay, you've got my picture. I have to go pick it up. How about I show you all my papers all at one time, and then you give me my bronze badge and then print me out like my version of a hard card, not a hard card, but a photo ID that says this is Zach. He's giving us his papers. This is his bronze badge. It can have the number. Bronze badges have a number. And I don't have to carry it around and worry, because then I'm worried about the next thing that somebody's going to ask me. I'm like, I'm really sorry, but I burned up my paperwork in May and it didn't survive, because the bronze badges don't generally survive too well. Usually about lose those by the end of the week because the pins all break off. So that's all I need to like, or you just lose it and like now I don't have any proof. And my bronze badge just became just worth admission because I don't have my papers. I have toddlers. Horrible things happen to things that I own. Horrible things.
I don't know. Because there's a digital. I got my last shot today, and the state sent me a text, and they said, "Hey, click on this, and you can make a little screenshot of you're fully vaccinated." Does that count? I don't know if they're going to count that or not.
I got Well, in theory, I got vaccinated, right, although my card says I didn't get vaccinated
it's in the future.
Until May 3rd. So maybe that's why I haven't gotten the email yet.
I got a text message, and I have a little screenshot that says I was fully vaccinated on today's date, and I'm good to go. And it's from the state website. Apparently, Indiana has passports. I know they're fighting over it now, or whether or not we're going to have vaccine passports, Kyle. But I got one. It may not be legal or accepted anywhere, but I do have something in writing. Who knows? I know if I want to take a cruise, I have to have it. If I want to go to the track, I have to have it. So I'm glad.
Going to the track so far is the only thing I have to have it for. But yeah, I'm kind of waiting to see what all. Apparently, they made that announcement yesterday. I tried to call like 9 or 10 times to get some questions answered. Never got through to the track. Apparently, their credit card machine went down at the same time, so it was chaos. They were real prepared for it. Because I used to have general, like, there's no infield parking. So where do we park? Like, the North 40 is a walk, and I'm not sure if they're going to do shuttles. My turn 3 infield pass was converted to a North 40 pass. Another friend who parks at 5th and Holman, which is basically the infield road course by the museum, he got converted to, I believe, south, just outside the track on the south side.
I walk from home.
Or you can do that. I'm bringing my home with me. I'm going to be a Speedway resident twice this year. I'll be spending like 7 nights out there.
It's a great place to live, actually.
It should be fun. Should be exciting.
I look at
especially in May.
My Amazon photo things comes up, and always about this time of year, I can tell I get antsy because somehow my pictures I pop up in Speedway because I'm like, oh, let's go to Mug and Bun, or let's go here, let's go there, and I'm like driving through town just to kind of start getting ready. Spring comes around, it's time to go Speedway.
I'll be camping. I'll be so many other places. In 2020, we could do very little. So my calendar every weekend, I'm somewhere. I'm going to get to Mid-Ohio. I'm going to get to Indy. Going to go to Nashville. Going to be all over the place. Very, very fun. Looking forward to the year. So they did sell 177,000 tickets for the race. Over the last week, they polled people and said, hey, who doesn't want to go? And they dropped it down to where now they're comfortable with this 40% number. They think they're going to be somewhere around 135,000 people. But they did kill the infield completely.
Yep, all the concerts.
On race day. And concerts are gone.
And the pit stop competition.
Is that gone too?
I think I saw they canceled it too.
And the Freedom 100, by the way. We're going to blame COVID for that too.
And predictably, Indy 500 fan is not taking the news well. Me.
They still kept qualifying practice open, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Outside seating only. Tower Terrace.
Okay. That's what I thought I saw.
Is that what they're going to do for those guys?
Yes.
Unless you have a bronze badge, and then you don't know where you're going to be able to go. Because you're going to have paddock access, so you're going to be able to get in.
Somehow. It's going to be, I
don't know what to expect.
I'm a little confused.
It's going to be adventure.
I'm a little confused by the closing the grass mounds down. I guess they can't control the grass mounds as much.
I think they just want to keep the infield closed as a hard, fast rule to anybody that's not credentialed or badged.
Yeah, minimal staffing. Because I'm kind of curious, like they said Pagoda Plaza will be open for some stuff. So like if I go into the garage and my wife's got the kids, or one way or the other, or one of us stuck outside, or can we hang out in the plaza? It's weird you have this great plaza and nobody's seen it in a year and a half or 2 years.
Every facility is different, right? Mid-Ohio, the grandstands were closed, but the mounds were open. Speedway, the mounds are closed, but the grandstands are safe.
Yeah. Mid-Ohio just painted grids on it, and they said,
here's your box.
This is your box. Stay in your box.
Stay in your box. But Mark Miles did say everybody that wants to have a seat can have a seat. But my brother, he came back and complained on Facebook today and said, I just want to go and stand on my cooler in the infield. I don't want to have a seat.
Yeah.
There's so many of the people that I bring, John, to the race. I on a normal race weekend, I have 25 to 30 people hang out infield, turn 3. Some people have seats. Some people don't even know a car goes by, but it's a massive social party in the infield. Those people don't buy tickets in advance. They're the walk-up crowd of the people that eventually some of them will fall in love with it and they'll buy the tickets. And that's one of the concerns I do have. And there's not much you can do about it this year, but when you go 2-3 years of you don't have that infield turn 3 crowd, once you lose the rhythm of we go to the Indy 500 every year, they're going to find something else to do Memorial Day weekend. And that's a risk. I don't know if they can't deal with it yet, but it's got to be in the back of somebody's mind.
Well, certainly, but I mean, the bottom line is we can't be stupid about this. And if we have another major outbreak or a different strain that comes through or something, they have to be safe than sorry. They've got to at least give the impression of looking like
you have to have the theater
smart.
that you were ahead of it, because you don't want the NCAA had the Indianapolis.
But the St. Elmo thing was,
and there were 2 deaths that the media has tied back to that.
Right.
If that happens with the Indy 500, there's not as much.
They've got to be cognizant that they don't want to be a super spreader.
Yeah.
And the people are getting vaccinated, but I saw a astoundingly low number of vaccinations in Marion County today. I see that the COVID restrictions are being maintained with masks and everything in Marion County. And I believe the number I saw was only 21% has been vaccinated in Marion County, which, I mean, it seems like it's roughly 50% nationally already, isn't it? And if it is 21% in Marion County, that's embarrassing.
And you have access. That's a conversation that we've had on this show for months, is that you can see that we were going to go from, we were dropping ages quickly. You went from 55 to 50 within a couple of days.
Yeah.
And we just kept dropping the age because the demand wasn't there. And then now at this point, it's pretty much walk-in clinics. You could have an appointment today if you wanted to have it. Well, it's too late now, but tomorrow morning you could get one.
It is a political commentary, though, because let's face it, the whole vaccination thing is very much a Republican Democrat. And we're in a Republican hotbed here in Indiana.
Coming from the Libertarian Party side, I've been I uniquely get to feel all of it. But I posted a picture of, we had a button. I got a button today for having my vaccination in Henry County at the at our local hospital, and they gave out these cool little buttons, and I was like, it's not Pretzel Day at the office. I love Pretzel Day, but I got a button. It was a free button, so that was cool. And I posted a picture of it, and I had multiple people explain to me how I was, stupid for going and getting it, and I was virtue signaling, and yada yada yada. Whatever, I could take it. It's fine, but it's so damn political.
Then you have to post a selfie later from Gasoline Alley and be like, "This is what this got me."
Yeah, my vaccine passport worked, and $175 or whatever that was. I feel like I used to pay $75 for my credential, and now it's
first year I did it was like
it's like $150.
It was like $100, yeah, and it's gone up. That's my only fear is I'm waiting for like things have kind of stayed the same. I'm kind of waiting to see if there's a Penske price hike, and he couldn't really pull it off this year because everybody just was carried over from last year, but we'll see. My favorite camping was infield for the Grand Prix, and that's been nixed for now. So I'm hoping I get back to that, but I'm hoping they don't bring it back at like $600.
Well, we always have the Hoosier 100, right, Kyle?
Not anymore.
What? We were trying to bring things up. We're going to talk about local short track racing and coming to see you. What heartbreak do you have for us?
Well, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, they announced that the Hoosier Hundred's officially dead. This would have been the third annual last one. So we got we were very fortunate the fairgrounds actually let us come back and race last year because COVID had screwed so much stuff up. We didn't even get to run the crown cars till August. So, and Indy wasn't even on the schedule. I mean, it was supposed to be 2019 was supposed to be it. It was done deal. They were going to put limestone on it and all that. And
you guys, you have an aversion to running on lime?
From what I know, my dad had raced some flat track races on some limestone tracks, and he said it was just absolutely like a tear on equipment, just sandblasted everything. So I don't think it would be possible to do it, but supposedly everything they had told us in 19 that they had secured funding and it was going to happen. And then COVID happened, and from what I'd heard, a lot of the money was coming from the casinos. And I assumed that they were like, yeah, we're not going to pump that out with everything that's going on and being shut down. So then, and from what I heard in late last summer, that the fairgrounds actually reached out to USAC because they weren't able to have any events or anything like that. And that was one way that they could maybe make some revenue for the year and stuff like that. And obviously we all wouldn't turn that chance to run the Indy Mile again. So we had it once last year, and then they told us in the winter meetings that, it was going to be on the schedule, and was barely sure that it was going to happen. But there was a slight chance that if they got a contract in place before the May date, that it could be switched. So, and I really didn't even know anything about it till I saw something on Facebook last weekend, and I texted our series director and I was like, hey, is this a real possibility? And he's like, we'll find out more tomorrow. So, yeah. And then the writing was on the wall later this week. So
you'll be going to Terre Haute on Thursday night.
Yeah.
Which is not a terrible drive. If we get set up in camp on Thursday night, Zach, we could theoretically make
And actually, they run sprint cars on Wednesday down there, so you could just stay there for 2 days.
It's not like you've got a Carb Day concert you're going to miss this year.
Yeah. Well, see that since there's not really very many Carb Days festivities, you can come out and enjoy the stuff at IRP.
There's a lot of possibilities.
And I mean, that's not that far of a drive. So
up to Anderson.
No, IRP is Brownsburg.
Oh yeah, that's nothing.
No.
Unfortunately, I can't walk to IRP from my house like I can IMS, but
there,
and you probably take a quick bike ride.
I appreciate your calling it IRP, by the way.
Yes. No. After all the 5, 6, 7 name changes, that's what I always continue to call it, because I think it's Lucas Oil Raceway now.
Sure. I still call the music venue on the northeast side Deer Creek Verizon Wireless Clips Music Center.
Deer Creek, the Hoosier Dome. You mentioned earlier, it's still the Winston Cup to me. Like you lost me after like the 5th company. I was like, and then when it was the Sprint Cup, I'm like, no, that just doesn't work. I'm like, sprint cars are different.
Sprint cars are Sprint Cup,
right?
Yeah, presented by Xfinity.
Well, at one point, sprint cars are a thing. They exist. You can't take that name because of a phone company. You got to find a way to make that work, and then they didn't make that work. See, I don't keep track of NASCAR sponsorship deals anymore. It's still, I have a Winston Cup poncho back in my camper.
It's still the Busch Grand Nationals to me.
Yeah.
So
I can't keep up with those either.
Yeah, it gets out of control. That's one of the things that the track could do, is that they could set up some shuttles, right, from IMS out to IRP.
And I know, like when Brian, I think it may have been the year he ran the Infinity Pro Series race, he ran the Hoosier 100, and they had like a shuttle system where he ran that race that day, and then I'm pretty sure the Hoosier 100 was that evening, and they had a big group of people, and then I think if not one, or maybe even the 2 of the times he ran the Indy 500, he ended up going around a sprint car at Kokomo.
Run that night.
Yeah, and they had a big fan deal after that too. So, but yeah, so the Hoosier 100's gone.
I was still trying to leave the track by the time all these guys would be.
And actually, last year,
Kurt Busch was landing in Charlotte. Brian would have been, getting to Kokomo, and I'm still trying to leave the turn 3 infield. And John's back at home on his couch.
I've got my grill lit.
Good to go.
And that would be that's one day that I would totally be because I'm just sitting there. I'm even going to hook my camper up until cars are moving down Georgetown, which isn't even a good thing to judge off of anymore, because Georgetown's not a through street, but I still wait for cars to move before I even try to leave.
You need to use your drone.
Man, you got to watch where you fly around there. It actually is the no-fly zone for the Indianapolis International Airport includes part of the Speedway property till about includes all of turn 1. So yeah, I could, but I'd have to really be careful. I really don't want a lifetime ban while I'm still in my 30s. My brother flew his drone at the track one time. And
just write a mildly critical book and see what happens.
Yeah.
I was going to make a joke for John, but I thought, no, he can do it himself.
He can laugh at himself. He's very capable.
Oh, God. You can cover USAC all you want to. We can get you on the inside. We can write a book. You got all kinds of stuff. Here's the question I want to ask. Mm-hmm. A thing that popped into my mind a minute ago. Is your car older than the oldest Indy car that's racing? Because we talked about this last time. It's been around a minute.
The dirt car is only a couple years old. We built it brand new, but the pavement car, I'm pretty sure from the steps I've done tracing it back, it's like either like a 2002 or 2003.
Wow.
Yeah. You're
so
still,
I mean,
you're
like,
still running.
I think I told them up till this last year, Bob hadn't built a new pavement champ car in like 6-7 years.
But I mean, this.
Are you allowed to say champ car? I'm pretty sure somebody's going to come looking for money. From
That's why if you look at the USAC logo, it says USAC Silver Crown Series champ cars.
But the technology doesn't change that.
No,
much.
I mean,
And so
if you look at a sprint car, it's the same thing from the 80s, just with down tubes.
Right.
I mean, still torsion bars, shocks, and that's, we were talking earlier about how far technology's come with cars and stuff. That's one thing I love about our race cars so much is they're so simple.
This is the politics. This is the exact side of it.
A steering gear, a drive line, a motor, a rear end. That's it. We with the ignitions have come a little bit ways, and and the fueling systems in the motor is all normally aspirated, so we don't do any electronic fuel injection or anything. So, I mean,
I'm sure they refine the roll. They might add a bar to the roll cage.
Yeah.
just for
And
safety items.
from that standpoint, especially with some of the instances that we've lost some people these last couple of years, they've tried to add some bars and make the frames a little safer, obviously. And definitely the seats and our safety equipment has come a long way probably in the last decade as well. But, they're just a race car. There's not a lot of gimmicks and bells and whistles on them. You got 4 shocks, a steering wheel, and a motor, and a brake pedal and a gas pedal. So,
how does your seat work? Do you get fitted for a seat, or you go buy a custom seat?
They kind of have them both ways. There's just like most of them, they'll measure them by your hip and your rib cage size, but then like most of mine I've been measured for them, so they they fit for maximum comfort and stuff. And the headrests have gotten a little bigger over the years, and now my head's completely contained. I mean, there's not a lot of movement from right to left or front to back, and I'll wear a Hans device and all that. So.
Is everybody in the series wear Hans now?
Yeah. Don't quote me on this. So I know a couple of years ago they made it mandatory, and then I feel like they kind of took it away. A lot of the older guys really weren't super stoked about it. But then I know a year or two ago that they did make full containment seats mandatory. So.
Don't be like Dale when it comes to safety.
I was going to say,
there's your lesson.
I'm like way behind on some podcast, and I was just listening to Dale Jr.'s where he had, his crew chief when he won the Daytona 500.
Greg Ives.
His dad.
Steve Letarte.
Yeah, Steve. No,
you're talking about Larry
McReynolds. And he was talking about
Dale Senior's crew chief.
Okay.
Yeah, Dale Senior's. Yeah, sorry. And that was a guy who just like fought any kind of like still open face helmet.
Yeah.
Earnhardt Dale Senior actively fought safety advances, and he paid with his life.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got nobody but himself to blame. The experts all say there's a 98% chance or better he'd be alive today if he'd been wearing a full face helmet and a Hans device.
And Brett Bodine was running with a Hans device.
And sitting in a proper seat for that matter, because the legend is he had a seat out of an old Ford van.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even now, like some Sprinter guys are starting to run full carbon seats too. So, I mean, even that technology is starting to trickle down into sprint cars and Silver Crown cars and stuff.
Is your seat made out of aluminum now?
Yeah, mine is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's got the foam has come a long way on the headrest from now. It used to be, they used to just use a single style or density of foam. Now it's got multiple layers to it. So it kind of, because there was a couple guys there when they first started making the headrest real big that were complaining of, they were so close together. If it was a rough track, your head would just kind of be a pinball, and you'd almost get concussions that way. So they've tried to develop the foam and stuff to dampen that a little bit better.
When's your first race this year?
So May 9th, Sunday at Winchester.
2 weeks.
Yep, 2 weeks. It's a day race. So High Banks over there east of here.
Pavement car ready to go?
Yep, we're supposed to go test hopefully on Tuesday. We're going to go with Bob and a couple other guys, and I texted him today to make sure all this snow didn't play a factor in that. So, but yeah, we'll go over there, just get some laps, shake stuff down from the winter, and then hope we'll be ready to go.
You should run some laps around the Riley School playground, the blacktop. That'd be awesome.
I think I've taken my quarter midget around there a couple of times back in the day, but I'm not sure they would be too likely of the Silver Crown car.
Somebody just had like a snow delay. It wasn't on a race day, I don't think, like in the last week or two. Mm-hmm. And I think it was at the Nürburgring, I think. But they were like there to race, and it snowed a bunch.
I mean, we have some connections with the Newcastle City Council, and they just built the brand new asphalt walking track that you could run a sprint car on.
That's like a great promo video.
Or all the way down to Southview, loop back around Main Street, and come back up.
Come back up.
And do some testing.
I mean, the Silver Crown car's got a clutch in them, so I can stop and go.
Perfect. Feel like the
So
city
great of a
is
video.
special.
Yeah.
That'd be a great video. Just to have just a Silver Crown car just driving around town.
Just running down.
You need to come cruise Broad.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
It sounds pretty cool.
Well, you know who's not going to write you a ticket?
Who?
Darren Jacobs.
Okay.
Especially for having chickens.
He's taken a private sector job. Comrade Jacobs. We just need to read it into the record. Very good friend of the show. He's leaving the planning commission. No longer going to be our zoning administrator. No longer going to be the guy that's measuring your grass to see if it's 8.1 inches tall and giving you a ticket. He's moving on to another four letter power company, stolen away from us.
I'm going to see if he runs into my brother.
It's likely.
Yeah.
It's very likely.
Same 4-letter company.
With that, it's the time of the show where we get into final thoughts. We pitch ourselves. We talk about the exciting stuff. Anything we missed. Correct any of my accidental lies. Start with you, Mr. Robbins. You buy anything for my brother lately, by the way?
No, he did come out and say hi to us, and pretty good sales pitch in.
Yeah.
But
he's charming.
I got it. Yeah, I got his catalog on top of my toolbox. So
as long as it's the top catalog, he'll be happy.
No, but it was really cool to hear stories from John, and I'd be really interested in getting his book because, like I said, we talked before the show. I kind of vaguely remember that kart IRL split. I was a little young, so it'd be neat to read up and just learn the history of that, kind of ins and outs and what happened. So
I'm very excited. So how do we buy it? I failed as a pitch man. I know it's in the show notes, but it's on octanepress.com is the best place to get the split book.
So, right, the Indy Split is being published by Octane Press. You can get it at octanepress.com or wherever books are sold. It will be available on Amazon. If you're interested in purchasing Time Flies, The History of Pac West Racing, you can buy it at my website, johnoreovicz.com. That's johnoreovicz.com. WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Slightly.
Stop.
Almost the same.
But seriously, buy a book and with Indy Split, give it a chance. I mean, I know people are passionate. Everybody's got their own different vision for what IndyCar racing should be and who blames who for what happened and everything. But I tried to tell the story in a fair and compelling way, and I hope I did.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. And I do think that it's far enough in the rearview mirror that, yes, some people are still going to have bitter opinions that were maybe around it at the time that were very close to it. But it's gotten to be – there's hardly any drivers left from before the series reunified, right? I mean, you are looking at the over 40 crowd, the Will Powers, the Scott Dixons. There are not that many guys that are left
Castor
that are even
Nevis
from there.
and Montoya aren't full-time anymore, so Power was involved.
Hunter Ray was still at the
Scott
Champ
Dixon.
Bourdais.
Bourdais, yeah.
But it's
only
the waning time. Even like Takuma Sato came along. He was in F1 at the time. So he's only been an IndyCar driver.
Since 2010, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting
Graham Ray Hall,
because you've got
guess,
this generation now, statistically at least, if you look at Will Power and Scott Dixon, those guys, they're pretty up high there on the list. I mean, Dixon's at 50 wins now. He's third on the all-time list behind just Mario and AJ. Will Power's closing in on 40 wins, so he's right up there with the Unser brothers and Michael Andretti.
And right up there in the all-time pole category as well.
Yes. So, the core group that's out there now, these older guys now, in a way, it's similar to the guys that carried IndyCar racing all the way from the 60s to the 90s. And then, go see them while you can. And that's one thing I'd say. I mean, the IndyCar series, it is still the best of all worlds. It's got road racing. It's got oval racing. It's got technology. It's got international flavor and everything. It's still, I think it's the best racing out there. And the one thing I would say is if you were a kart fan, if you were an IRL fan, if you were still just pissed off at everybody for screwing it all up, come back. I mean, that's been my message for years, despite what IndyCar management wants to think. I've been all about, hey guys, it's still pretty good racing. It's not 1993, but it's still pretty darn good. It's pretty darn compelling. And the field now is strong. It's stout. Schedule looks a lot like the kart days.
If you look at the bottom of the 1993 kart field versus the bottom of the 2021 kart field, the gap between the top
Right.
and the bottom now is much narrower
Right.
than the haves and have-nots of that era.
Right.
I
And,
mean,
there's a dozen guys that can win races this year.
Yeah. Alex Palou won this week.
He did. I mean,
Who knows?
Who'd have thought
And
that?
he's in the 10 car, which has won championships with Dario and won races with Rosenquist and Kanaan
Yeah.
and Weldon.
But honestly, that
But-
car had not been really.
Yeah.
I mean, it had won one race since 2012. Two.
It won
Kanaan-
Rosenquist last year and
Rosenquist.
Kanaan.
Thank you,
Yes.
thank you.
That's right. We forget the error of recency.
You know,
we forget what
I
happened
remember
last
a
week.
lot more about the '80s than
Yeah.
I do last week.
I know. I same problem. If I wasn't paying attention to it this week, I would have completely forgotten as well. All right, Zachary.
I mean, I've got nothing. I'm just a bureaucrat during the day. So L&K.
Pay your taxes. Keep Zach happy.
Yeah. L&K for your beef and Beehive Body Company, my cousin's place. Check those out for your body care products.
There you go. Well, I'm excited. Next week, I believe we do have Daryl Radford on, formerly of the Courier Times, formerly of the Indiana State Senate. He's going to tell some stories, and we're going to have a lot of fun. And then we got a Jesse Riddle, Mark Foltz thing coming up here in a couple of weeks.
Cool. Jesse can come fix my computer.
Yeah.
It's been down for 3 weeks.
With that, we say thank you guys very much. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course.
Thank you for listening to the Boss Hog of Liberty, which is part of the We Are Libertarians Network. I am Chris Spangle, and I am the founder of this network, and I invite you to listen to all of our shows, which you can find at WeAreLibertarians.com or by searching for these in your podcatcher. The flagship show is the We Are Libertarians podcast, where we apply libertarian principles to current events. The Brian Nichols Show is a conversation amongst Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, as they talk about what is happening in the news. And we have many other podcasts like The Chris Spangle Show, Upward, The Cost, Raw Audio Politics, Miranda's World, and Tad Talk, which is quite a ride. So check all of these out. Go to WeAreLibertarians.com and you can check out all of our great podcasts. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at WeAreLibertarians.com.